Good evening and welcome to Current Issues. I'm your host, Hesham Tillawi. Welcome to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Lots happening out there. Of course, after the Democratic victory in the House and the Senate, now maybe things can settle down and we get things going. Hopefully we will have Jack Murtha. He's going to head the Defense Committee, the allocation for the defense. So maybe the war will take a different turn. Some voices out there are basically calling for the division of Iraq into different countries. And this was something that we have talked about from the beginning. We have talked about what the purpose of the whole war was. Definitely was not to get the oil, because we already had the oil. Definitely was not to bring democracy over there, because we probably the last people on earth to talk about democracy. We don't even have it over here. But even if we think we have the best democratic system, it doesn't apply over there. And we knew that from the beginning. And also, it was not because Saddam was a threat, because, we knew him. We made Saddam. Basically, the CIA made Saddam and financed him. So therefore, the thing about Saddam being a threat to us, that was also not the case. The case was, and it was written way back then, as far as 1982, a paper from the Mossad was prepared from the Mossad saying that it took every Arab country and said where the fault lines are and what can we do to basically break up these Arab countries and weakening them. And that's exactly, it was written way back in 1982 that Israel needs to destroy Iraq, destroy the regime there, and create 3 different countries in Iraq: Kurds, Shiites, and Sunnis. And that's exactly where the country is headed to. Now, of course, George Bush can sit there and say that Iraq was going to be united and all this stuff, but when it all said and done, after they go through the turmoil of civil war, etc., etc., that's probably what's going to be happening. And that was the objective, that was the only objective for the Iraq war, is to basically destroy the country and make 3 separate countries. We see Biden talking about the best thing to do now is to split the country into 3. We're going to see more voices actually calling for that. And hey, it's not his country to do, so it doesn't matter what happens to it. And also it doesn't matter if it's divided and it's being weakening, as the main and only objective is to basically weaken it for Israel. And unfortunately, it's costing us, Israel is costing us a lot of money, a lot of agony, and I'm not really sure what the answer to the Israeli problem is. Tonight, though, ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to be talking about Iraq. We will be speaking about Palestine. It's probably a problem that has been there for a long, long time. It's probably the longest ongoing problem of our time. It seems like this problem is so complicated, even though it is extremely simple, but it looks like it's so complicated that we can't come up with a solution. And the reason I say it is simple, because it is. It really is. If the Israelis would leave Palestinian territories, then the problem is taken care of. And we don't have to go through all this. But the problem is the Israelis don't want to leave those areas. And as a matter of fact, today we have the Europeans, and they're trying to send an initiative out there saying that let's meet for peace. The Palestinians accepted it, and they think it's a good and positive step, but the Israelis refused it. And if you remember, if you've been following things, the Israelis, Olmert was at the White House a couple of days ago, and he rejected the idea of a peace conference with the Palestinians, something that the Palestinians have been calling for a long time. So it is really, the problem is the Palestinians want peace and the Israelis don't want peace. But the way you see it, though, is totally different, because the media try to show you what is not there and making you think that it is there. They're trying to show you that the Palestinians are the ones who want war and the Israelis are those nice little people there, that they just want peace. It's on the contrary. It's the Israelis who are killing the Palestinians. It's the Israelis who are destroying Palestinian homes. It's the Israelis that are imprisoning Palestinians, over 10,000 of them. It's the Israelis that have a wall around the Palestinians. The Palestinians cannot even leave their own towns. So many women give birth to their children at these checkpoints where they cannot pass to even go into a healthcare facility to take care of that. A lot of people died on this checkpoint because they were having a heart attack and they could not pass through, or they were wounded and could not pass through. So, as you see, but you don't see any of that. You don't see a lot of that. And tonight we're going to have Professor George Bisharat. He's a Palestinian American. He was born here in the States. He's a Christian Palestinian from Jerusalem, and he is a professor of law at the University of California. George Emil Bisharat is an American whose father and uncle, Palestinian Christians, emigrated to the United States and attended college before the 1948 Arab-Israeli War broke out. George was born in the United States 1954 and went on to actually acquire prestigious academic credentials, an MA in history from Georgetown, and a degree from Harvard Law School in 1993, a PhD in anthropology and the Middle East studies in 1987 from Harvard, and after serving 4 years as deputy public defender in San Francisco, he joined the Hastings Law School faculty, where he has taught since 1991, and his special field is legal anthropology. Now we're going to talk to George today about the media and its coverage of the Palestinian issue, and the media has a lot to do with your understanding of what is going on with the Palestinians issue. Believe we have the George with us? George, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much for having me, Hesham.
Thank you. George, let's talk a little bit about you. I know you were born in the United States, but your father came from Palestine. And as a matter of fact, I was reading that you might have a connection with Golda Meir, the former Israeli prime minister.
Well, yes, there's a bit of a connection in the sense that Golda Meir, during the time she was labor minister, lived in my grandfather's home in the Talbiyah quarter of Jerusalem. Our home was built there in the 1920s, and my family lived there for a number of years. And then the land, or the house rather, was taken over in 1948 by the Haganah, and eventually it was given over to a number of Israeli high government officials, including Golda Meir. So she lived in the upper floor of the home, and she mentions her love of the home, her appreciation of the home, in her memoirs, actually.
Isn't it amazing that Golda Meir would live in a Palestinian house, and she is famous for saying that she came to a land without people, for people without a land? And I'm wondering, if the land did not have people, who in the world built that house?
Well, it's quite clear that she knew who built the house. There's a rumor, it's unconfirmed, and it's been contested by her grandson. I received emails from her grandson after I wrote about this, but there is a rumor that she was responsible for sandblasting the tiles on the home. There was the front of the home had a beautiful ceramic panel, and it had the name of the home, which is Villa Haruna Rashid. And there was a time when she was expecting a visitor from abroad. Some say that it was UN Special Envoy Dag Hammarskjöld, and she sandblasted the tiles to eliminate that Arab name of the house, so as to conceal the fact that it had been inhabited by Arabs, by Palestinians, previous to her tenure in the home.
Now,
so, yeah.
As a matter of fact, that name, Haruna Rashid, is a very famous Muslim Khalifa or Caliph, and it's interesting that a Christian would name his villa after a Muslim Caliph. Can you tell me how is that? I mean, people might say, why would a Christian name his villa a Muslim leader?
Sure. Well, Palestine in those days was a truly multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religious society. And my grandfather, although a Christian, grew up in that milieu, and he knew Jews, and he knew Christians, and he knew Muslims, and he had respect and love for all of them. He had great respect for the Muslim tradition, and he had a specific appreciation for education and learning and justice. And of course, Haruna Rashid was one of the Khalifas who was known best for his erudition, for his esteem for education, for his wisdom, for his principle, for his justice. And so it was perfectly natural for my grandfather to name a home in honor of a Muslim who represented all of the values that he held most dear.
Which brings me to an interesting point. Why, whenever someone thinks of Palestinians, they don't really think of Palestinian Christians, even though Jesus himself was a Palestinian. Christianity started in Palestine, but whenever someone mentions Palestine, Christianity, it's like people are even surprised that there are Palestinian Christians.
Yes, that's true. Well, of course, there's great ignorance in this country and elsewhere about the realities of Palestine, about its history, about its people, about what they think, about what they feel, about how they educate their kids, and this is just one more of them. But we do find that then when Americans realize that there are in fact Palestinian Christians, it kind of opens their eyes and causes them to think a little bit differently and a little bit more open-mindedly about the situation there.
Okay. George, I know you're not too happy about the media coverage of Palestinian issues in the United States and in the West in general. And as a matter of fact, you do have an organization that I want you to talk a little bit about it, which basically it has a lot of media connections. What is your organization? Tell me about the organization and what you guys are trying to do.
Sure. Well, this organization is called the Institute for Middle East Understanding, and it was founded about a year ago. It's based in Oakland, California. And the mission of the organization is to help U.S. media primarily, but media in the West more generally, to do a better job of reporting on Palestine and the Palestinians. The Palestinian narrative is pretty much absent from the American press, especially. It's a little bit more evident in Britain and in Europe and the like, but generally it's missing in this country. And our assumption, our operating assumption, is that if American media, and I mean by that broadcast media, internet media, and print media, if they're presented with the resources to do a better job of reporting in a more balanced and a more fair and a more humane and enlightened way, they will do so. And in fact, our experience is that they will do so.
Okay. One thing that I've read, that you're not too crazy about the two-state solutions. Tell me, what's the problem with the two-state solutions?
Well, this is my personal opinion, and I have to say, you described me correctly as a Palestinian American. My father was Palestinian. My mother is American. I was born and raised in this country. I have a great deal of concern, obviously, for the peoples of the region. I'm not, and even despite the expropriation of my grandfather's home, I'm not living under occupation. I'm not living as a second-class citizen in the state of Israel. I'm not truly a refugee in the sense that many Palestinians are. So, my stakes in this are a little bit different from many other Palestinians. But I would say that the one-state solution really is the only solution that offers a means of remedying the injustices that have been inflicted in the past or are currently being inflicted on all of the segments of the Palestinian people. So a two-state solution, for example, would do little or nothing to address the concerns of Palestinian citizens of Israel who live, I'd be happy to elaborate, but who live in a condition of legal and political discrimination that is similar to that of African Americans after emancipation, but before the civil rights era.
Now, just to clarify, what are you talking about? The Arabs or the Palestinians who live in Israel, that's those who live inside, when Israel became a state back in 1948, those are the Arabs who remained in what is called the State of Israel. We're not talking about the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza.
No, you're right. I'm talking about those. In the war in 1948, approximately 750,000 Palestinians were driven from their homes or fled in fear from their homes because of the operations of Israeli troops or Jewish militias in the pre-state period. However, not all of them fled. There were about 150 to maybe 180,000 who remained in the areas that fell under Israeli control. And that number has grown over time to about 1.3 million people. So those Palestinians, who are both Muslims and Christians, are citizens of the State of Israel. They have lived there continuously, and they form about 20% of Israel's population. They face a variety of forms of official, de facto and de jure discrimination. That is, there are something like 20 laws in the Israeli legal system that explicitly privilege Jews over non-Jews. And I'd be happy to give you some examples of those.
Sure.
And then there are a variety of informal ways in which government policies favor Jews over non-Jews, over the Palestinian indigenous population. So those are the people that I'm talking about at the moment.
Okay. Now, the Palestinian issue, does history matter or factor much in what is going on there? I mean, the history of the Palestinians and how this whole thing started, where European Jews came and basically took over the country of Palestine. Does history really matter too much here? I mean, shall we go back and try to educate people of who's right and who's wrong? Does who's right and who's wrong really factor much in the problem right now, George?
I believe that it does, in fact. And, I think the history has to be understood, but it also has to not be exaggerated. Many people in this country have the impression that the struggle that is going on in the country in Israel-Palestine today is one that has very ancient roots. And the unfortunate product of that view, and it's an incorrect view, is that people say, well, these people have been at each other's throats forever, and what that produces is a sense that nothing really can be done. This is just endemic. These two people are just at it. They can't get over the past, and they're forever going to be locked in this dispute. That's wrong. The fact is that although this problem does have a history, it's a relatively shallow and recent history. It's one which dates back no more than 100 years, and it basically has to do with the Zionist movement's ambition to create an exclusively or at least predominantly Jewish state in a country that had a majority Arab population all the way up until 1948. And pretty much everything that we see today flows from that struggle. Basically, the Zionist movement, later embodied in the State of Israel, has attempted to control land and to exclude Palestinians and to essentially promote Jewish supremacy within its borders. And Palestinians haven't, understandably, have not gone along with the program, and they've been resisting. And there really isn't a whole lot more to it than that. Now, I don't think it's possible to just wipe the slate clean and behave as if there is no history to this issue. So, for example, the many people, many Palestinians in particular, still believe that the real core of the conflict has to do with the expulsion of most of the Palestinian population in 1948 and the creation of a refugee population that is the oldest and largest in the world today. So, solutions that don't address the fundamental problems, including, I mentioned earlier, the status of the Palestinian citizens of Israel. Now I want to emphasize the status of Palestinian refugees who have lived outside the borders of their homeland for 60 years, and there are now, close to 5 million of them, somewhere between 4 and 5 million of these people. They're not going away. They're not renouncing their claims to their homes, to the right to return to their homeland. All of that has been recognized in international law and by the United Nations. And these things, these issues, are not going to just be swept under the rug. Or any solution that attempts to do so is essentially going to be an unstable one, and one that will unravel in time.
Okay. The reason I asked that question, George, because it seems like not too many people in the world actually know the history you're talking about.
Well, certainly not many people in this country know it. There are plenty of people elsewhere in the world who understand this fairly well. And we're really in the United States are really quite isolated in this sense. Our grasp of this issue is just not what it needs to be.
Now, why you think that the people in the rest of the world know about the problem or the history, and we don't here in the States?
Well, it's a combination of things. We're not terribly good about understanding any other society outside of our own. We're a big, huge island nation, very powerful, pretty self-sufficient. I mean, of course, globalization is changing many things, but essentially we've had it pretty good here in the United States and haven't had to really understand other people. They have to learn our language, and they have to learn our legal system and all of that kind of stuff. But there's another significant factor, which is that there is a very concerted effort in this country to keep people from understanding the realities of the situation. And I'm referring to what may be loosely called, and others have loosely called, the Israel lobby. And lobbying suggests the attempt to influence government, and that certainly is part of what goes on. But there's very significant effort expended by this lobby, again defined rather loosely, to influence what happens in the media, what happens in educational institutions, and essentially how knowledge and images of the region are produced in this country, even extending into the entertainment industry and the like. So we're battling against a very determined, a very capable, a very committed effort for people not to understand this history.
Okay. George, what we're showing on the screen now is a map of Palestine, actually 4 different maps. One before 1947, before the partition plan, one showing the partition plan, and another one showing what happened after 1948, and then the 4th one, what's left for the Palestinians, which is not really much. What do you think? I mean, clearly, people can see that the Palestinians are getting the bad end of whatever is going on. There's no deal yet, but even with what's left of Palestine and what the Palestinians are accepting or willing to accept, where do you think the end of this going to be?
Well, that's a good question. I'm happy you are showing those maps to your viewers, because they more than anything demonstrate above all the or below, I suppose, all of the noise and all of the chatter and all of the justification and the like. Those maps demonstrate very graphically what is in fact going on, which is that Israel is trying to establish maximum control over Palestinian land while excluding, minimizing Palestinian population. That's essentially the game plan. I think what we're moving toward, essentially, is a rather acute form of apartheid. That's really, I think, what's going on. Interestingly, in an interview a couple of years ago, then Prime Minister Sharon confessed, or I confessed, suggests an element of contrition, and I'm not sure there was any, but he stated that the model for the Palestinian areas within the West Bank that he was trying to kind of establish were the Bantustans of South Africa. So the parallels that many people have noted, from Desmond Tutu to Ronnie Kasrils to John Dugard, all of these people, South Africans who have intimate understanding of the operations of apartheid, the parallels between what's going on in the occupied territories and what went on during the apartheid era in South Africa are not coincidental. They are. There is this evidence that the plan was essentially modeled on the South African plan of Bantustans. And of course, for any viewers who may not be familiar with that term, those were the little sort of statelets that South Africa created, tried to create, to create the illusion of independence and self-rule for limited areas of the black African population.
And do you think that's exactly what's going on with the Palestinian National Authority now? It's just an authority over chunks of separate chunks, actually separated by the barrier. And so basically what you're saying is there's not really much to the Palestinian National Authority.
Well, that's correct. I mean, the Palestinian Authority never, in its heyday, at the height of its authority, never completely controlled more than about 18% of the West Bank. You probably remember during the Oslo years, the West Bank was divided up into areas A, B, and C.
Right.
And the A areas where the Palestinians essentially controlled security and civil affairs was only 18% of the entire West Bank. And then there was an area where the Palestinians had civil control but not security control, and then there were other areas in which the Israelis exercised all control. And so, the Palestinian Authority never had territorial jurisdiction over more than that 18%, and they never had functional jurisdiction over any part of the territory. All of their powers, all of their authority was prescribed in the Oslo Accords, and they were legally, as a legal matter, they were ceded by the Israeli military occupation to the Palestinian Authority, and essentially at the whim of the Israeli government. So, I know many Palestinians, and certainly the leadership, probably sincerely entered into the agreements with hopes and with expectations that things would lead in a different direction. But the reality is pretty inescapable, pretty undeniable, and that is that the Palestinian Authority has turned into a sort of a Bantustan-like regime.
George, there are over 65 United Nations resolutions that are against Israel, and there's not even one resolution against the Palestinians. Is the United Nations really, I mean, when it comes to Israel, it seems like the United Nations is capable of doing things with Iraq and smaller countries, but why the United Nations can't, even though there are 65 different resolutions, and one of them, it says clearly that Palestinians who left their homes are to go back, and also territories that were taken during the conflict, especially 242, Resolution 242, it clearly states that Israel should clear out of those areas. Why the world community is not capable of forcing these resolutions?
Well, that's a sort of a painful answer to give, and the answer is the United States government. The United States government has plays an overwhelmingly powerful role. Not of course there's Russia and China and Great Britain and France and other powerful countries that exercise a significant role in the United Nations, but the U.S. role is predominant, and we're of course one of the permanent members of the Security Council, and we exercise a veto, and although we have occasionally joined resolutions that condemn Israeli policy in one way or another, or criticize it, when push comes to shove, the United States always provides diplomatic cover for Israeli behavior. So the United States has now exercised the veto power in the United Nations, in the Security Council, a total of 82 times, and since 1945, the foundation of the United Nations. 41 of those times it has done so, and twice in the last several months, on behalf of Israel. That is to spare Israel from the consequences of its violations of international law and prior UN resolutions, whether General Assembly or Security Council resolutions.
Why is the United States doing that? Why are we doing that?
Well, a complicated question. I think it has to do with a combination of factors that include the natural sympathy of the United States for the plight of Jews after the Holocaust. A strong sense that Israel serves American strategic interests in the Middle East, the very, very significant, very powerful influence of the Israel lobby, and finally the significant and growing support among Christian evangelicals for Israeli policy. I think all of these things play a role, and I'm not weighting one in favor of the other, but all of them play, I think, very significant roles.
Well, I mean, let's take them one at a time. The Holocaust, the Palestinians had nothing to do with it, and they paid the price for it. With AIPAC and even with the evangelicals, isn't that extremism in Christianity, George? When we say the evangelists are pushing towards, protecting Israel not for Judaism, of course, because Judaism and Christianity are two separate religions, and as a matter of fact, probably you might even argue that they're two opposing religions. So they're not doing it for the religious aspect of Judaism. What is going on here? I mean, I understand it's a very complicated issue, but I mean, isn't that extremism?
Well, let's do take one thing at a time, and let's talk first about the Holocaust and sympathy for the Holocaust and U.S. policy. I absolutely agree with you that the Palestinians had no direct participation in the Holocaust, had nothing to do with the Holocaust, and are no way implicated in it. For Europe and the West generally to compensate Jews for the egregious, terrible crimes that were committed against them by inflicting this cost on another people was a great injustice. It was, nonetheless, I believe that there was sincere concern for the Jews, and there was great distress, but this solution was of giving away another people's country was a sort of a low cost way of ameliorating Western European and American consciences after World War I. So, it was sincere and also sincerely misguided.
World War II, you mean?
What's that?
You mean World War II?
Yes, I mean the response to the Holocaust. Yes,
right.
Fine. It was one of the greatest crimes in human history, and it was understandable for people to want to address that and redress that and remedy that. But the means that they chose to do so was one that sort of minimized costs to themselves and imposed those costs on an innocent, guiltless people, the Palestinian people.
Okay.
On the other issue, on the evangelicals, I don't mean to be disrespectful to anybody's religious beliefs. However, foreign policy can't be run, rationally according to the religious beliefs of any group, and yet those beliefs are exercising a powerful influence over American policy with respect to Israel. And of course, you're right, completely right, that the push or the drive of the evangelicals is eventually to either convert all Jews to Christianity or to kill them. And so the alliance between the Christian evangelical movement and the Israeli government at this time is an alliance of convenience, which ultimately could be extremely destructive for the Jews themselves.
Okay. George, you mentioned something when you were talking about the media, and you said something, it can be, I know you mentioned about the control of the media, you mentioned about AIPAC, so of course all these subjects are intermingled, and I'm wondering, when you say something can be done about the media, what can be done about the media? How can we get the Palestinians' voice out there?
Well, that's a really good question, and here's the sort of the fascinating thing. What we've found with the Institute for Middle East Understanding is that if the media is approached in a professional way, and if they are offered the resources to report or to comment more fairly, and to and to give an opportunity for the Palestinian narrative to be heard, oftentimes they're quite open to doing so, even with some news organizations that you would not expect that from. There's absolutely no question that there are many people in the media who are sympathetic to Israel and to Zionism. There are owners and of major publications and broadcast media and the like who are similarly sympathetic to Israel and hostile to Palestinian interests. But even within these organizations, there are journalists who still adhere to sort of basic principles of fairness and to the basic idea that there are two sides to every story and every side ought to be heard. So what we found, in fact, is that the Palestinian narrative has never been effectively presented to them. They have never been given the resources to report accurately, and that is the failing of the Palestinian American community and the Palestinian leadership back home. We just had the leadership in particular has never prioritized communicating accurately and effectively and compellingly with the American public. And what we found is that people are really quite happy to be offered these resources. So we provide op-ed editors with op-eds from Palestinians, whether here in the United States or elsewhere, and they are often just very pleased to have a diverse perspective. Similarly, with broadcast media, there are times when they literally now come. I'm not going to say begging us for resources, but they do now ask us because they are committed to a certain basic fairness in reporting.
Now, George, let me take an issue
Sure.
with you on that one. Definitely, I agree with you. The Palestinians are not, due to the limited resources that they have, not presenting their story to the United States citizens the way it should be. But I really take issue with you that these people are not seeing both stories. People lie, but cameras never lie. And when other sources, these reporters you're talking about, they have their correspondents all over the place in the Middle East, and cameras don't lie, people lie. So they do have both sides of the story, but they choose to show only one side of the story. When an Israeli dies, you will see it all over the media as Alison Weir, which she has done a great job with her organization, If Americans Knew.
Sure.
If Americans Knew. And so really the story that the media does not have both sides of the story, I don't buy that, George. They have it, but they choose not to show it. They choose to only show one side, which is the Israeli side. So answer that for me.
Well, I don't really disagree with you, Hesham. Yes, I don't mean to underplay the bias and the influence and the like. What I mean to suggest, however, is that with competent and highly professional counter forces, a lot of progress can be made. I don't think that I believe there's probably a ceiling or a limit to the kind of impact that can be had by a group like the Institute for Middle East Understanding. And I believe that the advent, for example, of Al Jazeera, the English channel, is a
right. It started yesterday, by the way, or the day before. Yeah, yesterday.
Yeah, because ownership of the means of dissemination is a really important thing. What I find not disconcerting, but sometimes frustrating with media critics in the United States is, many people sort of dismiss the opportunities and dismiss the press and overlook the fact that in some respects we're the ones at fault because we haven't really done the work and we haven't really put together the organizations. We haven't put together the stories. We don't have the competent spokespeople, and a great deal more can be done. Now, we're not playing on a level playing field. We're playing sort of against the odds, but we can do a whole heck of a lot better. And I think, after we have put our house in order and we've done everything that we can and we've learned how to work effectively, and we've sort of reached the limit, then we'll have much more legitimate grounds to complain. But I can give you numerous examples of the kind of progress that we have made and the openness that we.
George, just tell me briefly before we do that. What is your website? What's your website address?
Yeah, www.imeu.net. Again, that's for Institute for Middle East Understanding.
Okay. Now, tell me briefly, like what sort of newspapers do you place these articles with, and like which are like New York Times? Which ones have you placed articles in?
Yes, we've had things placed, either op-eds or stories placed in all of the biggest newspapers in the United States. We've had pieces in the Wall Street Journal. We've had pieces in USA Today. We've had pieces in the Washington Post. We've had pieces in the New York Times.
Now let me ask you a question. How many? Do you know how many times? Let's say the New York Times. Do you know how many pieces you placed in there? Right offhand.
Op-ed pieces. I believe we've only had one op-ed piece.
Okay. How many did you send? How many requests did you send to the New York Times?
I don't know, but quite a number. I would say on the order of, let's say, 10 to 15.
Okay. I was just trying to see, like, like how often, or, if you send them 10, do they print one, or if you send them 100. I'll tell you what, I wanted to, didn't really want to take a lot of phone calls, but let's go to the phones, because it is so much interesting talking to you. But I'll tell you what, we only have like a few minutes left in the program. Let's take a caller. Go ahead, Freedom.
Sure.
Freedom, you're on. Go ahead.
Yes. May I ask a question to Dr. Bisharat, please?
Sure. Go ahead.
It appears that this week Al Jazeera has opened up and the American leg of this Al Jazeera network, and it's apparently available for cable television, like our cable company down here, Cox Communications, and cable companies all over the country. Is there a way we could get a movement of Palestinian Americans to write their cable companies and call their cable companies to carry Al Jazeera TV so that we could get a different view from our corporate media, Doctor? Thank you very much.
Thank you. George, how are they going to, is it going to be like Al Jazeera in Arabic on Dish, for instance, Dish Network?
I know that it's available on I believe at this point it's only available on satellite. Yeah, I don't think it's available on cable. And the caller raises a good point. I think it would be a good idea for not just Palestinian Americans, but other interested Americans in getting an alternative viewpoint if they asked local cable providers to carry the station.
Because I really think it would be great for the American viewer to finally see not necessarily the right opinion, but at least two different opinions, and make the viewer, choose, have them, decide for their own which one to go with. George, tell me, let's talk a little bit more about what can other Palestinians living throughout the United States do to help their cause?
Well, there's lots of work to do, unfortunately. Certainly we need to have effective lobbying, an effective lobbying effort with Congress, and we're many years behind the curve, unfortunately.
Well, you need a lot of money, and we don't have it. So what's the next one?
Well, the support for media work. Anybody who wants to go to our webpage and give us a donation, there's a way to do that on our webpage. I think the media is really important. I think we focus mostly on a sort of a positive strategy of trying to provide resources to the media so that they can do a better job. There's also a strong need for a kind of the bad cop routine as well. That is to say, media monitoring and criticizing of the media when it does a poor job, which it often does. And there are some organizations that have worked on this, but they need to be strengthened, they need to be enlivened and made more effective.
Now, George, normally most Palestinians, when they write, they're too emotional and their articles will be loaded with emotions. Are you guys having, or are you planning on having, training for Palestinian writers of what's the right approach and the wrong approach to stating your emotions or stating your opinion?
Well, we're not running courses or anything like that, but certainly we do help people. We help people, particularly, we help Palestinians who are writing from Palestine or from the region, and for whom English is not their first language. We often help them sort of put things in we take their words and help them craft them in such a way that would be understandable and appealing to an American audience. Emotion actually is important, and we try to write pieces that are human, not just sort of political and analytical. But it is very important that the predominant emotion not be anger, that it be compassion, that it be understanding, that it be openness and the like. Because our people have endured terrible things over the last 60 years, and their fundamental humanity and their decency and their dignity and their strength and their courage and
George,
their steadfastness are the things that we really need
let me
to
just interrupt you here for a second because we don't have much time.
Sure.
How can you, when you see children blown up to pieces and people being killed under the rubble of their homes, how can you present that not in an angrily manner? How can you be not angry when you write about things like that?
Well, it's very hard, Hesham. It's very hard because those things are terrible. But I can tell you, I've met the parents of kids who were killed in the West Bank. I remember one very clearly. I met who spoke to a delegation that I was a member of, a delegation of lawyers who went over in 2002, and he spoke with the greatest humanity and dignity and decency of any person I've ever heard. So I'm constantly inspired by the people of Palestine, not the intellectuals, not the political leaders, but the people who are living their daily lives and facing what they face with the courage and decency that they do. Those people are really my inspiration, and they're the ones that I think that we all have to emulate.
Okay. George, I just want to say thank you for coming on the program, and it was a great pleasure, by the way, meeting you over the weekend in Cleveland at the Palestinian conference. I believe it was an opportunity for me to meet a lot of people, and you were one of them. So I just want to say thank you for coming on the program, and hopefully we'll have you back here soon.
Well, thanks so much, Hesham. It was a great pleasure meeting you, and I appreciated your sharing the airwaves with me this evening.
Thank you. Thanks. Mm-hmm. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, in the next hour, we are going to have an interesting couple for you. We're going to have a Palestinian Christian who is married to an American Jew. I am talking about Huwaida Araf and Adam Shapiro. We're going to see if these couple can make it. Hopefully the Palestinians and the Israelis can make it. So when we come back, don't go too far. In 5 minutes we will be back, and we will have Huwaida Araf and Adam Shapiro with us. That should be an interesting interview. We'll see you in 5 minutes. See you then.
My name is Chris.